Hi there, welcome back to the channel. I'm so happy to be with you again. But as you can see, we're talking about Father's Day, at least the origin of Father's Day. Y'all know, you've come to know that I love to find out the origin of a thing. And the good news about Father's Day is I couldn't find that it had pagan roots, okay? So we're going to find out how it got started and some of the complications that were involved with it. But before I get started, I just want to say to you brothers that have not been given your proper respect for being fathers, I know that you've been overlooked sometimes. I just want to say, a New Life Ministry, we want to give you a shout out. We want to thank you for standing 10 toes down for your children and for your families. Just want to thank you for showing up and being real with your children. I know that society has drifted away from fathers and manhood and masculinity, but I just want to say that at a New Life Ministry, I appreciate you, okay? And just want to show you some respect and thank you for all that you do. And for those of you who are going to say, well, I'm not going to celebrate Father's Day because my dad was no good, okay? But then you're going to want to also be respected as a father when you become a father. So just know that you can learn from others' mistakes. Don't do, if your father wasn't there for you or didn't show up, don't you do the same thing for your children, okay? If you know better, you do better. So, and give them some grace. Maybe their fathers weren't there for them and they didn't know how to be a father. But anyway, we can all learn to honor our mothers and our fathers in a respectful way. And it's not just the giving of gifts, but it's being respectful to them and understanding their situation as well. Sometimes we don't walk in their shoes. We don't know what their story is. And maybe sometimes a good sit down. And if they're no longer here in this life, maybe you can, if you have resentment toward them, maybe just writing a letter as if they were here, not that you're going to be talking to the dead or anything, but writing a letter to express what you felt or how you felt about them, and maybe getting that off your chest so that you can release that resentment and then have an open heart for receiving your heavenly Father, okay? We don't want to measure him by our earthly fathers by any means, but at this time, if you haven't already, please subscribe and hit the post notification bell so you'll know when I upload new videos. Also give it a thumbs up, share the video, and just come along with me. All right, so let's get started. Father's Day. Father's Day was not immediately accepted when it was proposed, and it did not become a national holiday in the United States until 1972. During President Richard Nixon's administration. I thought that was interesting to find that out. Why was it so hotly contested? I didn't know it was such a debate. With American history, you might think that the holiday recognizing men would be perfectly acceptable, especially back then when men were men. After all, men dominated American society in the early 20th century. In addition, a Father's Day, or a day that recognizes the roles of fathers in the family, is an ancient tradition. In history books, there is mention of a Southern European tradition dating back as far as 1508, okay? Certainly, in modern days, we do not give Father's Day a second thought. It comes around. It's been almost 50 years since President Richard Nixon's administration declared the third Sunday in June a day to recognize and honor the role of fathers in society that occurred in 1972. Now, there's a Father's Day controversy. Interestingly, Father's Day was not immediately accepted when it was proposed. And you have to ask, well, why was that? Mother's Day was around. Well, Mother's Day came first, and it was officially recognized in 1914. So men in the early 1900s associated such a tribute to women and found the idea too effeminate for their liking. To be fair, Mother's Day was couched in terms of femininity. And 1914, President Woodrow Wilson called Mother's Day a way to recognize the tender, gentle army, the mothers of America. Men view the idea of Father's Day as similar to Mother's Day, which was popular with florists. Remember when we talked about how that lady got all upset because it became so commercialized? So the florists, the card makers, the candy people were making money, and they still are. So for fathers, it didn't have the same sentimental appeal. They didn't want flowers, okay? So as one historian writes, they scoffed at the holiday's sentimental attempts to domesticate manliness with flowers and gift giving, or they derided the proliferation of such holidays as a commercial gimmick to sell more products, often paid for by the fathers themselves. It was his money that they were buying the gifts with. But that's a good point, because you know that sister who got Mother's Day legal in this country got upset over the fact that it had become so commercial, and it was money and gift giving, and that was not what she intended it to be. Also, according to Lawrence R. Samuel, the author of American Fatherhood, A Cultural History, men had a different role in the family during the first half of that century. It was patriarchal. So they felt that a special day to exalt fatherhood was a rather silly idea when it was mothers who were underappreciated. I think that's an interesting point. They knew that women were underappreciated, so why y'all trying to give us big ups, okay? However, that sentiment changed over time for several reasons. So let's look at how this happened, okay? The woman behind Father's Day, her name was Grace Golden Clayton. This first known Father's Day service occurred in Fairmont, West Virginia on July 5th, 1908, after hundreds of men died in the worst mining accident in U.S. history. Grace Golden Clayton, the daughter of a dedicated minister, proposed a service to honor all the fathers, especially those who had died. Okay, so, however, the observance did not become an annual event, and it was not promoted. Very few people outside the local area knew about it, okay? So meanwhile, across the entire country, another woman, was inspired to honor fathers. Okay, so somebody else got this in their spirit. Her name was Sonora Smart Dodd. In 1909, Sonora Smart Dodd of Spokane, Washington, was inspired by Anna Jarvis, okay, and the idea of Mother's Day. Her father, William Jackson Smart, a farmer and a Civil War veteran, was also a single parent who raised Sonora and her 5 brothers by himself after his wife Ellen died during childbirth of their youngest child in 1898. While attending a Mother's Day church service in 1909, Sonora, then 27 years old, came up with the idea. Within a few months, Sonora had convinced the Spokane Ministerial Association, the YMCA, to set aside a Sunday in June to celebrate fathers. She proposed June 5th, her father's birthday. But the ministers chose the 3rd Sunday in June so that they would have more time after Mother's Day, which is the 2nd Sunday in May, to prepare their sermons. Thus, on June 19, 1910, the first Father's Day event commenced. Sonora delivered presents to handicapped fathers. Boys from the YMCA decorated their lapels with fresh-cut roses, a red rose for living fathers and a white for their deceased fathers, and the city's ministers devoted their homilies to fatherhood. I think on this day, June 19, 1910, is interesting because we're going to find out in my next video about June 19th, okay? So I think that date is interesting as well. When it became a national holiday, well, widely publicized events in Spokane struck a chord that reached all the way to Washington, D.C. And Sonora's celebration put the idea on the path to becoming a national holiday. However, the holiday did not catch on right away, perhaps due to the perceived parallels with Mother's Day. Remember, men weren't trying to be effeminate by any means, okay? They didn't want flowers and that gushy stuff. They weren't trying to go there. So in 1916, President Woodrow Wilson, and his family personally observed the day. 8 years later, President Calvin Coolidge signed a resolution in favor of Father's Day, quoting, to establish more intimate relations between fathers and their children and to impress upon fathers the full measure of their obligations, unquote. In 1966, President Lyndon Johnson signed an executive order that the holiday be celebrated on the third Sunday in June. You see? Under President Richard Nixon in 1972, Congress passed an official act officially making Father's Day a national holiday. That was 6 years after Sonora died at age 96. Y'all remember how young she was when she started this? The Great Depression. With so many people pinching pennies, the economy needed reasons for people to spend money. I'm just telling y'all, when you involve yourself in these holidays and you're just making the elite, the 1%, rich and richer, okay? So think about, people were pinching pennies because they're going through the Great Depression, and that thing it lasted for years. This is a terrible time, but they were like, we got to get some kind of reason to get these people to give up all these pennies so they can get in our pockets. So Father's Day was promoted by struggling stores as an occasion to get fathers some of the clothing and material goods they needed. It was a way to invite people to get Dad the necktie, the pair of socks that he probably would not buy for himself. And I don't know about you all, but when I grew up, that's basically all my daddy always got was neckties, socks, and handkerchiefs, maybe some cufflinks. We didn't know what to get him, so we got him things like that. But maybe that was planted. Maybe that was what was advertised to us. You see, I don't remember, but maybe so. But coming to this, maybe that was how that happened. World War II. Men were on the front lines. The desire to support American troops and the war effort provided another reason to support and show affection for dads. Okay? Changing the roles of fathers. The idea of fatherhood changed also as well. It is not viewed as a feminine model with flowers, but it has become more of a day that celebrates what dads like to do, whether it's like going fishing or flying or go-karting, or maybe today a game or a sports event. It focuses on the larger roles that dads play with their children. Partly, this change is due to the way society evolved, okay? There's no longer a huge armies of workers toiling away in industrial factories while women spend hours hand stitching and hand washing the family's clothes. The modern role of fathers has changed so that mothers and fathers are partners, each taking more responsibility within the family. And I like to see that when I see husbands and wives sharing in the cooking and the cleaning and the taking care of the children like it's supposed to be, because it's what it's called a family. He's a husband, a house band. He's the one that bands the family together. So traditionally, Catholic countries such as Spain, Portugal, Father's Day is observed on March 19th. And that's a feast to some Saint Joseph or somebody. In a Taiwanese celebration, Father's Day is on August 8th. That's the 8th day of the month. Because in Mandarin Chinese, the word for 8 sounds like the word Papa. So they picked that day. All right. In Thailand, Father's Day is celebrated on former king, and I cannot say his name, so I can't even begin to say it, but maybe I'll write it in the description because I can't say his name. But anyway, he was a former king, and his birthday was on December 5th, so that's when they celebrated it. But anyway, that's just how Father's Day got started. And I just think I always find it interesting to find out an origin of a thing. So now we see it doesn't have pagan roots like Mother's Day has its roots in paganism. Doesn't seem that I could find that it had pagan roots at all, but this is how it started. But remember the commandment, friends and family. It says, honor your father and mothers. And I know that some of us have this issue with dads because sometimes dads have fallen short of their roles. Okay, so I'm encouraging you, if you've one of those fathers who've fallen short, you can do something, because the scripture says to not provoke your children to anger. How do you provoke your children to anger? By not showing up when you say, by not doing what you're supposed to do. That provokes them to anger. Make amends now. Instead of expecting something for Father's Day, in order to start opening up a dialogue between you and your children, you go and apologize for what your fault, what you have done, that you know that you've hurt your child. Be there for them on that day. Don't expect something from them, but you give them something so that you all can build this relationship, okay? Because what we want to see is families get back intact. Because as you can see, this enemy, and he's a real enemy, is out here to destroy families. Men, since 50 years ago, or maybe 60 years ago now, when men were removed from homes, and I grew up, I'm going to tell you, it was rare to not find somebody having a dad. It was rare. Everybody had a dad. Everybody had a James Evans from Good Times in their home. I'm telling you, I grew up that way. And so then something has changed, and now there's no fathers in the home, and yet there's children, there's families. So listen, you can change that, because this is an enemy that has come in to do that. And we know that there's an agenda with the Alphabet Soup Group to also change that. So I'm just saying, for you fathers, step up to the plate, okay? Do what is honorable. Do the honorable thing by your children so that they can then honor you. It's never too late. Trust me, it's never too late. So what will you do to honor your father? This Father's Day that's coming up, it doesn't have to be something big. It doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be a tie or socks. It could just be a card of apology. It could just be that, to start mending that bridge. But if you're cool with your dad, then find out what he likes to do. Maybe it's camping, maybe it's fishing, maybe I know a lot of fathers have this big deal about grilling, but maybe instead of him doing it, you could do it for him. But always remember, it's not on one day. You're to honor your parents all the time. Don't let it go by that you lose your father and you wish you could have said something to him. I love the fact that my father and I had a rift years ago in our lives, and when I became a Christian, it was like the Father impressed upon my heart to make amends with my dad. And once I wrote that letter of apology for my part, listen, y'all, my dad was dead up wrong for what he had done, okay? But I jumped in it, and I got involved and did and said some things that I was wrong. So I can't be responsible for his actions. So what I did, I took responsibility for my part I played. And that was the beginning of our mending of our rift, because our relationship mended and we became father and daughter again. And I'm so grateful that we had that opportunity, that I had that opportunity with him up until he died. So listen, I just hope you enjoyed learning about the origin of Father's Day. And until we meet again in our next video, may the grace and peace of God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ be with you all. Shalom.